And thank God it's not COVID, and he's doing the right thing and staying home. And if I know Jerry at all, he's probably watching us or listening to us, and I will keep a close track on my texts for any miscues and corrections that I may have from the Great One. Before we go live, I was thinking on the way in, this is we're in 3 years and almost 3.5 years doing this show. And in the beginning, I thought, I could do this. And then I watched Jerry, and I said, I can't do that. I can't do that. So sitting across the table from me is a fellow brother for another mother, a Marine, Scott, the marvelous Mortgage Morris, and we're going to talk a little bit about
Good morning.
Interest rates, and there was a couple of questions on Monday I wanted to tackle that listeners came in, and so 3 of us are going to try to do the job of one person, which is Jerry Miller, and keep the track on the feed and answer questions. And Judah, whenever you're ready, let's rock and roll, my friend.
All right, quiet on the set.
Good morning. Welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith. And if you noticed, I'm not Jerry Miller. And Jerry is under the weather today. We wish him all the best. For those who listened to the voice intro before we started, he doesn't have COVID, but he's under the weather. And I was thinking on the way in, out of 339 shows, 3.5 years, this is the only second time I've done this without Jerry Miller. So hopefully I will do him justice. He's my better 7/8 in this show. But today, across from the table, I have Scott, marvelous Mortgage Morris. Couldn't think of a better buddy to help me through today on my own than a fellow brother and a fellow Marine. And as I was said earlier on the intro, we have 3 of us trying to do the job of one person, which is keeping track of the feed. So please throw questions into the feed. That's what makes this show great. And move along. And Judah, myself, and Scott are going to try to keep a track of the questions and ask them. But we're going to kick it off. How you doing today, my friend?
Doing good, man. Been a couple weeks since I've been on. Just had some various things between being.
Was this something I did?
No.
Okay,
No.
Mostly,
family. Took vacation.
Yeah.
Then had some things scheduled. Needed to be different places that just didn't line up with Wednesdays, which is kind of a bummer. But glad to be back. Got a crazy day. We've seen some kind of like a little bit of like improvement as far as rates. We'd come off some highs, and then we print a higher than expected inflation number this morning.
Was it really higher than expected?
Yeah, I think they were.
Did you expect it to be that high?
At this point, it's I think it's a roulette wheel of how high it's going to end up being. But if they were forecasting 8.8, came in at 9.1 month over month, and you're seeing some negative reaction in the bond market because of it. But the reality of the situation is everyone and everything else, the commodities market, the bond market, the stock market is all pricing in a recession, and the Fed is is married to the fact that they have to continue to do something to try to react to this, but they can't control the supply side, which is truly the problem at this point, inflation related. So they're going to increase prime another 75 bips, and you're going to see some negative bond market reaction to that, and that's mortgage rates are going to creep up a little bit again until the recession fears are heavier than the inflation fear, and that's what we're going to see, and we're seeing it today.
But you called it a couple of months ago. You called it that the rates would take a little bit of a dip, and they did. Mm-hmm. It's about 5.30, right, for a 30-year mortgage, somewhere along.
And we came down from like a average 30-year high of like 5.75 to 5.125, but we're going to start walking that back up now.
So I remember 1981.
Yeah, I mean,
is there anybody?
or 2018. Like, this is not.
Well, I was talking about the inflationary numbers because the last
okay.
time,
Yeah.
the last time inflation was at this was in 1981, and I did a quick little bit of math this morning. So, and I looked on there's a website that you can look at, and you plug in the year and what was the gas and what would it be today. Just to put it in a little bit perspective, 1981 I was paying $1.31 a gallon for gas. In today's dollars, that's $4.23. And that's not too far off.
Yeah, we're like 440, I think, 460.
440, 450, depending on where you go. And I think actually Costco's closer to the 423 number, if not a little bit less than that. So I found that to be interesting that, in today's dollars, it's really not that far off. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, no, totally. Of all of the, the real world inflation numbers, at least that's somewhat in line with reality as opposed to, say, rents and groceries.
So I've got a chart here, and you're the mortgage expert because you're the marvelous Mortgage Morris.
Thank you.
I added a third one in there, by the way. I have no idea where that came from, but I added a third one in there. So I'm looking at like the different recessions because we're going into one. 1980, 81 to 82, early 90s, early 2000, the great time of unpleasantness, and then the one in COVID. But going back to 1980, right, which is the inflation numbers are kind of close to that, which is the 1981, there was a 6-month recession between January 80 and July 80. And the interest rates at that time went from 16% to 11.8%. So to your point, when somebody, when the balance starts balancing here, I think recession's going to take over inflation, and the rates are going to drop a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's why. So one of the things that a lot of people might be seeing or facing if they're out there shopping, or agents or whomever, is the question like. So I hear my client has to, are they paying points, just to get in? And a lot of times they're going to be, because there is no par rate that exists, because all of the investors believe that these loans that are being funded right now will all be refinanced in the next 24 months.
So let's talk about points. For those that are listening or watching that may not have been through the process, what is a point and how do you buy it down?
So this isn't even about buying down. This is a point is 1% of the loan amount, and that's built into the pricing about what it costs to get to par. So to all of my clients, my suggestion is let's not look at buying down the rate, because that money that you're spending to get to a certain place, you are most likely never going to recover, because most likely you are going to refinance this loan before you make that money back in payments. And what I mean by that is, let's say there's no par that exists, and par meaning no cost to lock the rate. Let's say there's 1 point just to lock it, whatever the day's rate is, and you say, well, I'd like to be a quarter lower than that, and that would cost you 3 points. So on a $300,000 loan, that's $9,000 in additional closing costs you'd be facing. I'm saying don't spend the additional $6,000, because by the time you take that $6,000 and divide it by the amount, you're going to have so many. Let's say you have 100 months. Well, you're not going to be in this loan for 100 months to recoup that. You're going to be in this loan for probably 12 to 24 months before we look at refinancing it.
So the advice is kind of buy now, refinance in so many years.
Focus on keeping your closing costs as low as possible.
It's interesting you should say that.
And then save yourself tens of thousands of dollars when rates drop and we look at refinancing.
So it's interesting you should say that. There's two things that are creeping itself back into the real estate market, and there was a meme somebody posted, I saw on Facebook this morning, it was a young lady holding a phone and going, what do you mean you're not going to waive home inspection, right? So the professionalism is starting to grow back again, which is great on that end of it, but a lot of folks have to work their way through this. I'm finding a lot of buyers are kind of coming back into the market. Are you seeing that at all? As your application is increasing or decreasing, or?
So I'm seeing kind of what I've been speaking to for the past several months, which is I see less investment calls, and I see an equal or same amount of, hey, we're moving there and we need to make a purchase, we're having a baby, we're getting divorced. We're seeing all the things that drive traditional real estate transactions at essentially the same volume. Now, is this less than what we saw last year? Sure. You've got less qualified buyer pool with a higher interest rate environment that we're in. But at the same time, there's still a lot of opportunity out there, and that's for buyers included, because if they're looking to go out and spend X amount in rent when they can be the same or within $100 either direction, and be building equity, that puts them in a much better position in the long run. And that's what we advise to. That's what we coach to. That's what that's what we know is best for creating generational wealth, for building something greater than yourself or your family.
It's interesting. I just looked at something on a Facebook post on one of my feeds as you were speaking, and the gentleman is spot on. I'll leave his name off of it and the specific comment. But, real estate's been super great to me anyway, other than the time of great unpleasantness when we lost $17 million. But we've recovered from that. And a lot of that is based upon ownership of property and building wealth. And, getting started now, regardless of what the interest rates is the right answer to go forward. Jerry and I were talking on Monday. We had an open house it was right in the urban ring, right up against Charlottesville, around $400,000. We had 12 couples or 12 groups come through there. And what I found it to be super, super interesting was the diversity of the buyer pool coming in. It was everything from empty nesters to three young men looking to not pay rent any longer to move into it. But there was a couple of questions that came up on Monday that I wanted to tackle today. And first off is this back on market. So as you know, I've been tracking week over week since the beginning of COVID around 2020, mid 2020. I take these snapshots week over week of the car footprint. And for those who follow my post on it, a year ago in the same 7 days, same car footprint, there was around 10 homes that came back on the market. 6 months ago, same footprint, was 9 homes came on the market. 3 months ago, it was 10. Between 3 months ago and this last week, it jumped up to 23 units. So it's more than double it. And I took a hard look at the individual numbers, and I expected to see a lot of new construction in there, and it really wasn't. Out of the 23, only about 4 or 5 of them were new construction that came back on the market. Are you starting to see loans that you process that are kind of terminating and going back on the market? If so, why? What skill levels do we need to improve to help these folks through? Does that make sense?
So I don't have a big fallout rate from, I had somebody who was buying a second home in North Carolina that didn't like some home inspection items, but I don't see it. We close, yeah.
So Yon and I do about 99%. Whatever we end up getting, whatever our team gets on the contract, we close.
So I haven't seen a ton of that. What I have seen, just from paying attention to what people are looking at and looking at a days on market kind of situation, is I've seen properties that have come back on that were maybe that didn't get a lot of interest. They've come back on at more realistic price points. But I've also seen stuff that is driving up days on market because it's still sitting there because someone, or maybe a year ago they could have got what they were asking, and now we're talking at the $800,000 plus range where things are sitting a little bit longer depending on how realistic the seller is about where the property should be.
Price changes.
Yeah.
Same thing. A year ago was 30. 6 months 32, 3 months ago 32, we're up to 62. So we jumped by 30 price changes within 3 months. So the market, I think from a price perspective, is starting to balance itself out. But I broke down these back on markets, and 6 out of the 23 were new construction. Everything else was an existing.
Now, those
an
back
existing
on
home.
markets, are those new construction? So I know what some builders do, or their representation does, is where if, let's say that they've had especially if they're a turnkey, if they've got costs that are going on, they'll pull off market and then make an adjustment to price. Is that the kind of new construction adjustments that you're
It's
seeing?
interesting. On the way in, I was talking to some people in the local industry, and actually people out of Richmond. And so, what are they seeing as far as back on markets? And new construction's a little bit different, right? They generally don't go on the market for sale. So, for instance, one subdivision won't put all their 100 lots.
Correct.
In the MLS, right? They'll put 1 or 2 or 3 in there in the different models. Most of them don't hit the MLS prior to selling, right? It's you pick up a phone call, you call me as an agent, we go out and meet the builder's rep, so forth and so on. It doesn't necessarily hit the active market. It just goes straight into pending, straight into sold, right? It goes through the process.
Yeah, but if you look at your I think we'll talk. That's like a larger scale. I think if we're talking like mid-size, some of what Liberty does, some of
that would be the outlier. Liberty does put most of their stuff on the market on the front end.
Anybody, I think the ones where they're doing like 3 to 5, where they'll purchase 20 acres, bust them into 5-acre lots. Those could all go on. Those are the ones where I think I'm seeing.
And we're not talking about customs either here, right?
We're talking about like customs,
Semi-custom, semi-customs and
we've
production.
Here we've got 4 models, 8 models. Pick that, and then go in, and we'll get your countertops and everything.
Yeah. So generally, how it'll work is you go in there and go ahead and do, let's say, the production side of the house, right? The Stanley Martin Homes side of the house, kind of typical path on this stuff. You'd pick the house, you pick the model, and what a lot of these builders were doing was, because of the shortfall of product, right? They were actually, and we used to do this when I was building back in the day, because this whole cycle isn't anything new. On that end of it, they're building homes up into the drywall, and then they're hitting it on the market because they were having struggles getting inventory.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
that is totally shifted to it, and they're not putting anything in the ground until they have a contract in it. So this cycle of coming back on the market and new construction will kind of cycle itself out a little bit, because they're not going to put it under contract unless they get a 10% down payment, right? They're not going to move forward with it. So you'll see that back to normal, the normal process on it. I also think what's happening with some of this new construction is and I've said this many times before, it takes so long to get a project to this point of selling that they made guesstimates of what the market's going to be 5 or 6 years later. And I think now that's somewhat catching up to them, because the market is moving quickly. For instance, and you can help us with this, if I'm going to have a client looking to buy a $550,000 townhome, typically that buyer profile can go a little extra and get a single-family detached somewhere, and that's what I'm seeing on my end happening is that they're pivoting away from that on that. Does that make any sense?
No, definitely. But I mean, that's kind of always the case. But when we're talking about availability, like if townhomes are, we can go out and get this, and there's no single-family. Or they don't want to be in such a tough competitive environment. I think that was kind of driving some of the action in that direction, versus now where we're starting to see a little more inventory coming on market, especially depending on the location. Like the more options people have, the different decisions they can make with.
Well, so that's the struggle here. So I've been running numbers. So my famous little book here, Albemarle County, single-family detached, new construction only. I've been looking at year over year. So the beginning of this year until today, actually in until 7.6 is when this set of numbers versus 2021. And it's interesting. Single-family detached new construction sold. These are units that have closed, are literally only 1 unit difference year over year. 2022 year to date, first half of the year, is 111 sold at 718, by the way. And in 2021, there was 110 sold, right, at 646. So it's a bit of a delta on the sales price. But the interesting drop is the attached product in Albemarle County. It's actually pretty large. 2022, this is new construction only, was 178. This year, the previous year was 218. So that's a total of 18% difference, right? And by the way, 355 is the sales price on that end of it. And if you look back in 2019 and 18, it's really interesting.
Do you have the sales price there?
I do. That's the interesting part. So in 2019 and 18, they all hovered for the number of units sold somewhere between 160 and 180. The prices were roughly between 250 and 275.
I was going to say 285, yeah.
So that was much tighter. And that's where, I think that's where the first-time home buyer and the first-time...
Yeah, I mean, that's the entry point.
That is the entry
what
point.
we're still missing.
That's the missing middle. When you start going up over 350, it gets a little challenging. And it's interesting, even in Fluvanna County, which we have no single-family attached yet, we will with Colonial Circle here in a little while, with that Stanley Martin is doing. We went from 2022 single-family detached. Hold on a second, wrong page. Single-family detached new construction.
You got more notes than I do. I'm looking at the email you got. I'm like, I don't have all this.
No. These are
right.
Keith notes that I keep. I'm hitting you on the sideways there,
like
Mr.
like
Marvelous Mortgage Morris. Yeah, so that was on par. There was 54 single-family detached units sold in Fluvanna in 22. And first half, and 55 in 21. Huge jump, by the way. 18, 19, and 20 never got over 30 units sold. 396 on the sum. The rest of the counties don't really have enough new construction really to count numbers. Louisa, I think, with the next big county. So the new construction mostly has been focusing around Albemarle County. Alfred, we got any questions coming in on the feed?
We certainly do.
So Alfred is helping us out with questions today.
We got one from the wonderful Elena Mangione.
Oh, Elena.
She says, "Hey Keith."
Hey Elena, come over here and save us. Have a sip of Save Smith anyway. Have a little sip of cough syrup and help me here. We got 2 empty seats.
She says she's got another topic. The euro is equal to the dollar, and she says Europe is on sale. And I will add to that not only that, you guys also mentioned the CPI hitting the 40-year high at 9.1%. We also have Biden saying that inflation is unacceptably high and the data is out of date. And we have Bitcoin dipping below 19K.
Is Bitcoin real? Anybody ever answered that question for me? Is that real?
It is real.
Real? Okay.
It is.
Well, we do want to talk euro for a minute. I know a little bit about this. And it's funny, Yona is going home to visit her family, which she hasn't done in 5 years, and pay respects to her mom and dad who's passed away and see them and take care of some family matters. I guarantee you in October, the euro, those numbers will flip and the euro will be higher than the dollar. It never fails. Anytime the Smiths go to Europe, the euro usually goes up. But that's on par as a can't remember the last time that ever happened where the euro was on par with the dollar. We keep a close track of that because of our European relations and family on that end of it, and are traveling back and forth. And we go down to St. Martin, which uses the euro, so we
Well,
keep.
I mean, I before the show shared just a quick snippet saying, the bond market is pricing in recession, the stock market is pricing in recession, and then globally, the commodities market, you're starting to see copper, like I say, things that can fall on your foot, all the prices of all of those items, WTI, everything's coming down, but the supply side is where the inflation is built into our food and to things that the government can't control by increasing rates. So we're going to continue to see kind of the same, I think, through September, month over month of high inflation print, and them increasing the cost to borrow is not going to slow that number at the moment, because I think they're disconnected. But what it will do is drive us into a recession, which eventually will stop people from buying things, which will then,
But aren't we kind of there already?
You ain't seen nothing yet, baby.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Keith, this is the first time since the end of 2002 that the euro has fallen below the U.S. dollar.
It's the first time. So it's actually below. It's not on par?
I think it's dipping just below.
Yeah, good. Honey, buy some euros. Yeah, let's buy euros. Buy euros.
That's right.
We got to buy euros for that October trip that she's taken on that end of it.
Convert now.
But those who have used foreign currency, right, regularly, in which my wife and I have, that's the best way to understand inflation, right? Because, when we used to travel to Europe, we haven't been there in many years, since before, I really haven't gone there since the time of great unpleasantness. But, when you're bought, your $1's costing you €1.50, and you're buying a cup of coffee at €5, it's really costing you a little bit way more than $5. And that's kind of how this inflationary thing works on everybody. Look, I said this in November and December, and I'm going to stick by it. Inflation is what's scaring me about the housing market and real estate, and I just don't see anybody putting their thumb on the scale to fix it. I just don't see it coming down, and this 9.1% is a prime example of it.
Well, I think the Fed's going to continue with the policy that they've kind of married themselves to, and
which is raise short-term interest rate.
Raise short-term interest, unload their $9 trillion portfolio that they built buying bonds for all this time. And they're going to do that through the end of the year. I've said going first quarter next year, we might see some minor improvement September, October, rate related, as we kind of get into the bigger this. Once inflation starts to correct, which I think is a September, October thing.
You really think inflation is going to adjust itself this year?
It's October. I think we stop seeing 9, we start seeing 7, 5.
Really?
Like those 5's probably not realistic, but 7-6% month over month. Once we start seeing those numbers, but we're going to start seeing those numbers because I think there's going to be you're going to continue to see corrections in the job market.
Which way?
Towards a higher unemployment rate.
I agree with that.
And as those things occur, I believe we're in a very insulated area. Who may be affected, as you might see, growth stop with some of these government contractors. But I think at the same time, those are, that's part of what insulates Northern Virginia and Charlottesville is the university, DIA, NJIC, and then the rest of the alphabets in Northern Virginia, as far as those people don't lose jobs typically. We've been traditionally a pretty insulated area overall when it comes to that type of problem. But nationally, that problem is going to exist, but it will benefit this area as we begin to see rate improvement and the Fed step back towards correction, whether they
So what does that look like?
initially they're going to stop raising short-term interest rates. They're not going to bring anything down, but I would be willing to wager that at some point they do something. They step back into some sort of monetary easement related to the bond sector, and that's what's going to improve the rate situation the most quickly and have the most dramatic effect. And I think it happens in the first quarter of next year.
So we're all in the same ecosystem, right? The housing ecosystem. I can tell you, and maybe it just might be timing. And as a dear friend of mine said, I'd rather be lucky than good any day of the week. But our business tempo.
Luckily, for most of my life, I've been better at being lucky than good.
Well, that makes two of us. We both married real well, real well, way out of our league for sure. But the reality of it is we are extremely busy right now. Our little shop, a lot of phone calls, a lot of interest, a lot of tell me what this means, a lot of questions from buyers and sellers, and I'm finding out, and I just don't know, again, this just might be cyclical, it just might be where we are in the world, but it's a lot of tell me what this means, right? And I'm seeing a lot of folks, and again, this may just be us, but I'm seeing a lot of folks turning that big idiot box that's over there off and asking a trusted advisor. Are you seeing the same thing? Are you seeing uptick a little bit?
that idiot box and and everything that you see on social and all and
Don't knock on social because we're doing this.
I'm not knocking social. I'm talking about what puts eyeballs on things is this bad news parade.
Oh yeah.
You don't see success stories broadcast on the news, and you might get they put like puppies on for like 2 minutes at the end of a news segment. Like no, that's not when people are. That's not what drives their engagement in their eyeballs. It's showing you how horrible things are. And if you could focus on the individualism of what creates success for your situation, and stop focusing on the bad news bears,
It's interesting you should say that. I was requested to do an interview on NBC 29 on Monday, which I did on the end of it, and I tried to take the conversation from a positive. It was talking about lack of inventory, stuff that we've been talking about for 340 shows here, for 3.5 years on the end of it. And again, it's not long format where you and I can tear into a subject and have the viewers and listeners chime in on it. But they sure as hell only carved out the negative part, not so much the positive part of my conversation, the 10-second, but so much so my mom Tina called me, goes, and so Scott knows that we're family. Scott's known my family from day one on that. She calls me, she goes, so what exactly did you say? And I said, I have no idea what that. I had no idea what I said based on that breakout. So to your point, pick up the phone, call a trusted advisor, call Scott, call somebody from my shop, call from anybody.
Here's a great example. I'm not doing a ton of refinances. Nobody is right now because
that's done a 180, right?
But at the same time, all right, let's say you're somebody who owns your house free and clear, and you've run up some credit card debt. So you're running 13 to 20% interest payments on X amount of money. You got a home equity line of credit maybe that you took out that's adjusted up, and you didn't know was going to adjust up. And you got car payments at 4 to 7%, depending on what that looks like. Well, if we take a look at your overall cash flow and go, okay, so we could take out $120,000, pay off all your debt. You're going to have a mortgage payment of $750, or we could do it over 15 years, and you're going to have a payment of $1,200, $1,400, and you're gonna go from paying $2,000 plus a month where you currently are, and X amount in interest. Then all of a sudden 6% doesn't sound so bad.
So I did an analysis for that interview, right? Because we were trying to compare rents to purchases and so forth and so on. And, the average rent in Charlottesville right now for like a 3-bedroom, 2 baths, it's around $2,600, $2,700. You could buy a 400. There was a $400,000 home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, so you can buy that. I did some quick PITI math, and you actually were about $100 to $200 a month less than, that's what 3% down, 5.5% mortgage rate. Figured you have decent, your credit score's somewhere in, above a certain level on that end of it. And that was kind of the positive I was trying to lead with. That didn't make it into the piece.
Yeah,
Just
I
so
mean,
that you-
again, it's not all doom and gloom. It's about, your specific situation, and we all, we're humans, we're tribal. We operate from a fear-based mentality. So we see these things, and and part of this, when we talk, some of the recession fear is, just consumer demand, like how people feel about things. That's part of what drives this, and then that is driven from this. This negative media that's vomited all over you and everywhere you look at it. And the key is, if you have something coming up or you want something, reach out to someone who does it every day and say, how does this work? What can we do this? We want to do this. What does it look like? And then you're making a decision based off of real numbers, timelines, facts. I'm renting an apartment. I'm out of the apartment in August, September. How much money do I need? Where do we begin? That's where, think about how many conversations begin off of just those words. Where do we start? That's the key, is being able to have a team that's going to communicate at a high level, make you feel comfortable, and help you execute the plan to get what you want.
It's crystal ball. Where do you see home prices second half of this year? Where do you see it going?
Flat. Now, I think that's price point dependent too. Because I'm still seeing multiple offers, and
I was going to ask you that question.
so if the property's got some deferred maintenance and things are, if it needs some love, those are the ones where I see concessions coming back after home inspection and stuff like that. And hey, we're doing some 203Ks where we've got, people going in and saying, hey, we want this and we want to do this to it. It's like, all right, let's put it together. But on a super clean property at $400,000 to $600,000, I think that's probably still going to remain competitive in the short term.
So I'm reading a report, CoreLogic is saying nationwide about an 8.5% increase, price forecast gain the second half of the year. I think that's a little on the strong side.
I think the mortgage part of that, I think that's a much shorter tower in that column.
Yeah, so
there.
the MBA, the people who actually lend the money, right, are roughly 3%, 2.7%. But the average of all of them, like Fannie Mae is at 10, Freddie at 10, CoreLogic has got them at roughly 10, NAR's at 8. Historically, I think we're ranging somewhere between 3 to 6%. And
so I said before all of this started that we were going to see rates go higher and faster than anybody anticipated.
oh yeah, you're spot on.
And I'm saying that come first quarter, possibly into this year, maybe October, November, when we start seeing a correction, we're going to see like somebody staring at their phone pulling up to a red light. It's going to be like a bump and then a hard stop. I think this.
What do you mean a hard stop?
I think we're going to see unemployment go up quickly.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We're going to see
Well,
we're gonna see a
your
harder
industry's
reaction.
laying off people left and right.
Yeah, because they overstaffed, and these are big companies that.
They're all digital, right? They're all.
No, they were. So these are. This is why you have a trusted advisor,
There you go.
not
That's
a
where I
call
was
center. These are people who build out companies that built out call centers to capture refinances and found themselves grossly overstaffed for a situation that they're in now. So it became, gosh, we need to lay off 5,000 people to remain profitable.
Well,
that's not how every company is built or how they built
Can
themselves.
you imagine if you're spot on, Trusted advisor, we've been talking about this for 340 shows, 3.5 years. Trusted advisor. This is what matters. This is how this works, right? You pick up the phone and you call Scott. You pick up the phone and you call Interstate Service Company. You call Pearl Certification. You call Segura Solo. You get real live people that are in the local market to help you through this process. What I feel actually sorry for is, can you imagine the people that are in the loan process that their loan officer just got fired or got laid off? What do they do next, Coach?
Yeah, well, I mean, so not just that. In the non-qualified mortgage sector, a company called, so let's say that somebody wants to do a bank statement loan, just lots of, so non-QM, so not your traditional path towards getting the money, the whole company shut down. So that means you as an agent had, somebody that went out and, was finding a creative way to get financing, and the entire mortgage company just out of the blue is no longer available. Like, we won't be funding because we're no longer in business. That's not an everywhere thing. That is a non-QM company.
QM, explain QM.
Qualified mortgage.
Yeah.
So they don't fit Fannie Freddie guidelines.
So I've got all kinds of papers in front of me, and I'm trying to track the papers. And again, God love Jerry Miller. I had this silly thought, right, which only lasted a little while. I'm really good at reading my own inabilities and understanding what I'm good at and what I'm not good at.
I thought it was just short attention span, but continue.
No, it's really short. I'm 6 foot. Well, I used to be 6'2", but I broke my back a couple of times, so now I'm 6 foot, shrunk a couple of inches. I'm okay on height. As far as attention span, I'm way below that. But what I wanted to ask you, because now I lost it and I got to bring it back. I'm reading articles. I devour this information every morning before I go out on my bike ride. On that end of it, is loans going to get easier to be made now? Or is the regulators going to all of a sudden are they going to open up that cookie jar like they did and say? Because that's what scares the hell out of me, Scott.
So actually, Fannie Mae just made some adjustments, some more conservative adjustments.
So they went the other way.
They went the other way,
Good.
making it.
It's not helping people get into homes, but nobody wants to repeat.
So let's say that you had somebody who was looking to do a cash out refinance, and depending on credit reserves, etc., you may have had good approved eligible findings prior to July 6th, I think is when they made the adjustment. And then after that, you may no longer have. And I don't think I've seen any purchase business where we had somebody who was pre-approved, but we went through and reran everyone anyways to make sure that we didn't have some weird obstacle to be aware of. But I know that there was probably some conservative steps taken in that direction as well, but not to the extent cash
I heard
outs
they're
were.
lowering credit scores. Is that the case?
So I think that you've seen companies doing that.
I'm sorry?
I think you've seen companies do that across the board since the beginning, since COVID. When COVID happened, tons of companies made their own overlays. This isn't a Fannie Freddie thing as far as what they would write loans for, and then gradually over the course of time you've seen them, so some of them may have gone up to 660, then they dropped to 640, then 620, 600, 580. You won't see anybody do traditional qualified mortgages below 580. Typically, certainly there's somebody out there who may go,
So in your opinion, I think I know the answer to this, in your opinion, loosening credit requirements is a good thing or a bad thing? Is that something we need to look at, look at?
You're not going to see some broad.
And do you think they're stepping it up?
When you say they, let's define they.
The regulatory.
So let's say Fannie. No, you're not going to see a change in what you're not going to see any kind of dramatic change in what's going to run approved eligible based on reserves, credit.
You don't see
finances.
the federal government or Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac coming up with some sort of special first-time home buyer program more than what they have now?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not in a risk-on environment heading into a what they're forecasting to be. Although what they're saying is going to be still a soft landing, but they're intentionally driving a higher employment rate. They're not going to say, hey, we're going to allow more risk in an environment that we're trying to run a higher unemployment rate in.
Well, it's just going to increase the frustration because there's no inventory, right?
Well, sure.
And they're
But
allowing.
I think that comes back into play next spring or late
So-
winter
so
first quarter next
Jerry
year.
and I were having this conversation, so volume-wise, second half of this year, are we going to be on par from last year? I think
We're going to be less than last year. Last year, the last 24 months were an anomaly.
Yeah.
And the number of people who refinanced into lower rates, I do think humans have short memories. We're starting to see some properties come back
What
on
was that?
market. Humans have short memories.
What?
Yeah, exactly. And
I know what that's about.
But-
it's getting worse the older I'm getting.
Today's
Today's Wednesday, right?
It
Today's
is.
Wednesday, Joe?
Today is Wednesday.
Thank God. Thank
Take
you.
my trash out tonight.
Thank you. And if you got any decent questions, please chime in there.
Yeah,
there,
kick
Alfred.
us off
We're just doing two jarhead stuff
Yeah.
talking here.
I do have a couple more
Yeah.
comments.
Good.
We've got Elena mentions again, some predictors are estimating the EU may get as low as 0.85 to 0.9.
So there's a story behind that. My father-in-law, God rest his soul, was a vice president of Bank Austria. And when the EU came up, when the euro came out originally, and I can't remember the year that it was. I think it was late 90s when it came out, and it was like at 75. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Give me $10,000. Let me buy you $10,000 worth of euros." And I went, "No." But when it hit $1.50 on it, I was like, "Damn, I should have did that."
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
I should have did that.
And,
So that's interesting. That needs to hold, Elena. That needs to hold to October. So Yona might be profitable on that trip.
Nice. And we've also got a comment from Neil Williamson, the wonderful
Thank you, Neil.
Williamson. This is a quote from David Roche, President Investment Strategy, quoted on CNBC. It goes, Europe may be hit by an energy crisis all of its own, which produces the war recession, the recession caused by war.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Neil is pretty an outstanding individual. I was actually following him on Twitter on an Albemarle County Planning Commission meeting, which I think he was the only one in the room on that meeting. So thank you, Neil, for all the hard work that you do there. When folks take a look at Keith Smith, Real Talk with Keith Smith, pull partners down, all our partners in there. Neil's one of them. Hit the donate button. Donate to Neil. He does some great work for us all. Anything else there on that, sir? I'm not seeing anything on my feed, other than I'm getting invited to a cup of coffee, which is good.
I'm not seeing anything else right
Okay,
now.
great. So let's go ahead and move along a little bit on here. So you're seeing that, Scott, that we're looking at about a 20% difference year over year. My argument or my discussion with Jerry on this on Friday and Monday was this feels more like 2019 or 2018 as far as volume goes.
Absolutely.
His argument, which had water in my opinion, was we didn't have the things that we have going on now, right? We didn't have inflation and so forth and so on. But as far as the tempo of the market, of the real estate market, to me, this feels more like 2018, 2019. Agents and people that come into business since 2020 don't really they haven't had been able to work through the skills that is needed to do that. How long have you been doing?
5 years.
5 years. So you've seen it on the other side and what it was. So the skill sets that you needed 4 or 5 years from now, you probably need to start brushing off for what's coming before us. Is that, and if they are, what are those skill sets?
So, a lot of that is, it all comes down to communication. in my opinion. And that's with your team, with your clients. This attitude of not picking up the phone or your ability to deliver and manage bad news is, there's no bad. It's just all news. How are we going to solve this problem? And taking ownership of that is really what creates an experience for the client and causes, and how you manage the relationships that you're in.
So at 5:30 in the morning, 3 things pop up on my phone. Those who listen and watch the show have heard me say this before. Be professional, be caring, and be trustworthy. And this is a pros market. We're now in a pros market, and there's a reason why 5,000 people got laid off at some internet banking company, because they're not professional. Well, they may be professionals, or we're not going to disparage them, but they're not. I can't pick up the phone and say, Scott, I got a problem. Let's figure this out. I need a pro to figure this out. And care matters. You have to care and be trustworthy, and trust matters. And I every morning I wake up. And I'll be honest with you, I struggle with this. Every day I don't, I fall short on those 3 all the time on that end of it. And I struggle to go ahead and do this. But that's the key today's market is, be a professional. A turkey can fly in a hurricane. 6 months ago, if it had a pulse, you could do it. Now you have to do this. Now you have to deal with the phone call of, well, I know I said this is for informational purposes only, but I don't like the home inspection. Mm-hmm. Right? So what do you do then, coach? Right? Or I know that I went ahead and wrote in the contract that the appraisal, I'll cover the difference with the appraisal because I wrote that contract 60 days ago. Well, I'm not comfortable with that anymore. How do we work through that?
Well, one thing that has not changed is I still don't like long closings. But
have you ever?
That's what I'm saying. Anytime you've got the longer the runway, you kind of.
So, are you guys still doing your shop and lock program?
I do, but it depends on when they come into the process, qualification-wise and everything else, what their wants and needs are, is how much I advise to using it. Because to get the most amount of benefit, they need to be 90 or 120 days. And the pricing is not as good at 90 to 120 days because the market's so volatile. And for a great instance, I advised several clients. They were like, let's do this. This is in the last month. And I said, hey, look, I think, why don't we wait? Because I see we're gonna run this recession news. So it's kind of like this balancing act in institutional money is like, oh, all right, today, bad inflation print that everyone knew was coming. It's like, oh, the bond market sells off again.
I'm not watching the screen, but it looked, and we don't have it on, but I can tell you, my phone hasn't, people that I communicate from 5:30 this morning.
We've probably seen a negative 40 basis point or so move in mortgage rates from yesterday to today, which means if you had,
negative as in rates are going.
Let's call it up. So let's say it's possibly close to 50. I haven't actually looked.
So we're up a half a point, is what you're saying.
So if in basis points. So what that means is if you were qualified at 5.25%, but and there was no par. So instead of that costing you at $300,000, $3,000 to lock that rate, now it's $4,500. So they moved, 50 bips.
Got it.
But I would say that's about what we're going to see. But then next week, as the recession story comes back into play, we'll see a little correction, and it's going to be this. But I think.
What are you advising people locking in? I started the process with you now.
So let's say that if it's new construction and we would traditionally do a 6-month lock, I will have the conversation to say, hey, rates could be at 6% in February. My belief is that that's when we start to see some serious correction. all I can do is give you that advice. This is what it costs. If you are happy with this now,
Lock it in.
lock it in.
Yeah.
Please do not gamble on my opinion. But at the
Sure.
same time, if you're a gambler or you're like, I don't want to do that, I'm willing to buy down, or I'm comfortable with whatever it is.
Do you have a lot of people buying down rates because they probably listen to your advice?
I would no, because I tell them, look, if you maintain your credit position and the home's going to continue to build some equity, you're going to refinance this loan.
So what outside of the box opportunities or products?
I think there's a lot of, so I've seen this, there's 3-2-1 buy downs where for this year it's, 2%, the next year it's 3%, and then 6%, and it's like, but it costs.
That's in 3 years. Right?
Yeah, but it cost you $15,000 to do that. Like, why would you go spend that money that you're never going to see
A simple amortization table will fix that for you, just to take a look at that.
It will. But what my point is, in the cost, there's a lot of, there's companies that are putting out some very creative things to do, but there's a cost. And the
Sure.
investors know that these loans, even in their creative sense, are going to be refied. So you're never, while it seems attractive, it's in my opinion, a lot of times a shell game. Because for you to spend the money to have this lower payment with the likelihood that I think that a lot of these will be starting to be refinanced next spring, is the benefit really there for what's costing you to do it?
So it's interesting. You and I, we do business together. We're friends. We're family. We're family. As much as you probably don't want to admit to that.
No, I
admit to that publicly anyway. But my home, and we've had this conversation about refinancing our home when rates were like at 3%, and we had that same exact conversation. I'm at 5.5 or something like that.
But you were going to sell, and you're not going to sell.
Yeah, well, that's Keith being Keith, right? That's Keith being. Let's call it. Let's face it. Mrs. Smith is ready. Mr. Smith is not. Look at this. I'm getting nervous already.
I'm not moving. I will addition on addition. I've got boxes in my basement that are not unpacked from 6 years ago, and I'm like, honey, do you get a glass of wine and a chair and sit there and and stare at the stuff? Can we just toss them?
Scott, I have boxes in my basement from our move.
Hey, I think I helped with that move. Yeah.
From the house from Laguna, which was 20-something years ago, that were boxes that I packed when we moved out of the apartment, the rental we had on 22 Club Lane in 1987. They're still, and they're so old that the tape is like yellow and falling off. So I kind of get it, but your advice to us was spot on. If we're going to move in so many years, why spend this $12,000, $15,000, whatever it was, just and we've taken your advice and we've been doing it, and we're just paying more towards the principal, so we have a little bit of windfall. When we take a look at our budgets, we're paying to the principal, which ultimately we're paying ourselves on that. So when we go sell and buy that house in Belmont, Mrs. Smith wants to buy, with or without me, we're gonna, we basically.
We'll get you an ADU. You can live in the backyard.
I think that's called a tent. It's called a tent. Judah, got anybody chiming in? No, Mr. Miller chiming in saying, Smith, pick up your game. Nothing like that. I'm surprised.
We got another link from Neil.
God bless you, Neil.
And we've got, let's see, here's something from Katie Treviso Pearl saying,
Katie Pearl.
Do you think the number of agents will go down in this shift?
The short answer to that is yes. It's interesting. Katie, I'm going to go ahead and get a number here because we talked about this last week, which I thought was a surprising number. Give me a second, Katie. I'm going to go ahead and find this. So Katie, I actually called Carr and I asked what was the number of real estate agents in 2019. And the number of real estate agents in 2019 was 950. The number of real estate agents that we have right now, realtors, sorry about that, Donna, realtors, is 1,000. We've got 400 affiliates, right? So we got a total of about 1,400 folks in CAR, but 400 of them affiliates, which is like Marvelous Mortgage Morris and
Insurance companies.
Mr. Fincham and Fincham Associates and stuff like that, and the rest of them are realtors. So there's only been a gain of about 50 real estate agents since 19, which was a bit of a shocking number. I expected it to be much. It feels much higher than that. I think, Katie, what's going to happen here is as the market shifts a little bit, you're going to see a lot of folks that maybe are my age and up just deciding to retire and get out of the market. There's going to be less younger people coming in.
I would think
for sure.
that you'd see, so at least with some of the, when you describe your age and up, I think that those are the people who go ahead and do the CE and renew a license, and then you see younger people who move towards different opportunities who don't take the effort to renew a license. That would be
So the real question is out of the 1,000 agents, who's really producing and who's really not? That's the real question. And what number?
Looking at it from strictly a licensing perspective,
Yeah.
I think that the people who move are people who are younger, didn't find success, move on to something else, and just don't go back and do it. And I think that you've got then an older population who go ahead, renew the license, do the CE because what else?
Well, I'm a prime example of that, right? Eventually we're going to retire. I'll never let my license expire.
That's kind of what I'm directing at.
Much
So
like-
I think the fallout is from a younger demographic for a license purpose. From a production standpoint, I mean, we live in people talk about 80-20. We live in a 90-10 world where 10% of the agents produce 90% of the production. And the mortgage world is very much similar to that.
Well, we have same industries. Our worlds
yeah.
are pretty much the same. It functions the same. If I opened up my wallet and took out my Class A general contractor's license that I've had since 1988, right? I haven't physically built anything since 2009, 2010, even though, my license, is everything from, let me see, I'm a master gas fitter, electrician, I could do commercial.
There's a house
But I will never let that license expire.
There's a house being built in like a little HOA neighborhood right behind me, and I've been watching it go up for the last
You miss it,
2 or
don't you?
3 weeks. There's parts of it I miss, and every now and then Tom Donahue with Ovation Builders and I will get together and we'll go build something, whatever that something is. We'll frame something, put it, whatever. And I'm like, oh man, do I miss this? And I miss working with my buddy, and I miss building something.
Let's go down that. We've got only a couple of minutes because I got 11:30 Zoom call I got to do. Let's go down that road because I'm going to close my numbers and all this stuff. And this is just Keith and Scott. I walked through a new construction project the other day, and I got to tell you, the smell of wood and sawdust.
I'm watching them. They're they're getting ready to sheath that roof, and we're gonna be 90 degrees a day. I don't miss that, but I miss I miss the actual the building, the physical work. Is something that I really enjoy.
So I tell this story all the time. We work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. We do great things. We put people in homes, right? We work together as a team. This is beautiful stuff, right? But sometimes at the end of the day, you kind of wonder, so what did I accomplish today? And I remember when we were building houses, even a bad day, when you had to do things 3 times over on it, at the end of the day, we walked up, had a beer, and said, look, we built that, right? Or there was something tangible that we achieved. Not that we're not doing anything tangible. We're like I said, we're doing great stuff. We're putting people in homes. Katie Pearl, all these folks that listen and watch that are on our partners list, all make magic happen for folks for one of the top 3 things in one's life, right? Food, shelter, and clothing. On that end of it, so that's huge, a huge responsibility. But so. Those who watch the show know one of the projects I lost was Nahor Village, right? It was part of the $17 million of losing everything that we had. And I ride my bike through that every day. And I had a conversation with somebody the other day called, well, aren't you like bummed out about it? And I said, no, I drive by this oak tree I saved. I built a whole subdivision around it. There's beautiful maple trees, $100,000 worth of maple trees. I drive through that thing and I go, wow, look what I did. You know, and it's not about me, but I don't take this, oh, I feel sorry for myself approach. I looked at, I accomplished something. There's hundreds of people that are living in there, and the dream happened. I just didn't see it to the end, and we lost everything we had and rebuilt it, thank God, back to this stuff. But, you know, I do miss it, though, brother. I got to tell you.
Yeah.
I miss the smell of thing. I miss the smell. It's funny, I took a video on the way in. Colonial Circle is being developed and they're doing the burn pile. Do you remember when I used to put you and my little brother on the burn piles?
Yeah.
The burn stuff and do, we'll leave the rest of it out, but I'm sure you burnt wood.
Yeah, yes.
On that stuff.
Yeah, well, they were setting,
do miss it, man.
They were setting trusses the other day, and that was always one of my favorite days.
Crane Day.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Crane Day.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about a crane showing up, but everybody gets all excited. Everybody picks up the step a little bit. And
Well, I think part of it is how much that effing thing cost, and you gotta
it didn't cost you nothing.
No, that's true. Let's get them in, get them out of there. But and there's always a little more action to getting all those things, getting them up in the air. So that was always fun. Last night, chicken story.
Chicken story.
More of a duck story. 4 a.m. I hear like birds. Like I wake up and
Can't get out a show without a chicken or a duck story.
I head out and there's a fox trying to dig under because I didn't go lock him up last night because the storm was so bad. And hit him with the flashlight, and he's trying to dig under and get the birds, and takes off. I get the birds wrangled and put up, and they get back out this
How
morning.
much property do you have?
26 acres.
Are you just surrounded by other property?
I've got 66 that won't be developed on, and then and then I back up to an HOA neighborhood who I'm sure is always annoyed with the redneckery that is happening over at my house. So
Forrest escaped on Friday again.
Oh no.
Yeah. And that Forrest, that's our, what is it, Tennessee, it's a rescue, but it's a Tennessee Walker hound, and found him in Fox Hollow, which was roughly 4 miles away. He crossed Route 53, I think 4 times.
That's crazy.
And it was, cool. The great thing about social media, right? We don't have a GPS thing on him. Yona put it out in these multiple Facebook things, and we literally sat on the front porch, and by people reporting him, we can watch where he was going and all that stuff. But if you ever need any help with that fox, offer me a martini, and I'll turn him loose on the thing. Let me get the GPS tracker on him first because he'll go. So, Judah, we got any other questions before we wrap up today's show and thank everybody for their patience?
Let me just point out that Neil Williamson is writing a lot of great food titled articles.
Titled articles.
Yeah, his current one is notes from the Albemarle Sausage Factory.
Oh yeah.
It starts with a John Godfrey Sachs quote saying, "Laws are like sausages. It is best not to see them being made." And this follows some of his other great titles, like Albemarle proposes bananas technology fee, and development area Doritos.
So there's a couple of things people shouldn't see, and one of them is me in my biking suit. So that whole sausage thing, my biking, my compression shorts, and my compression thing. There's a mental picture Neil probably didn't need to have, and the rest of the people didn't need to have. So Neil, thank you for chiming in. Look, get better, Jerry. Please. Miss you tremendously.
Get some rest.
Get some rest.
It's a big statement to 340 shows, and you've only missed this being the third. Second. Yeah, that's
This is number 2 that I've done this in this seat.
Yeah.
Without Jerry here. I mean it with all my heart and soul. I love you. Could not have do this without you. I really thought at one point I could, but I can't. So thank you. You're sorely missed. Hopefully you will be back here on Friday. Friday, we're going to have a pretty killer show. We're going to have Quentin Beckham and Yona Smith in here, my better 7/8. And we're going to try something a little bit different. Tomorrow, we're going to throw out a question out to out to the world, out to the social media world, and it's going to be called Lessons from the Legends, and we're going to be talking a little bit about, the question's going to be wrapped around what's their 3 big surprises they've had since they've been in the real estate industry. And you'll be surprised, most of it isn't about selling. So we're going to have a lot of fun.
It's all about the people.
It's all about the people. We're going to, hopefully Jerry will feel well enough to sit in this seat. Otherwise, we'll have to fake our way through it. Thank you, everybody. Have a great, what's today, Wednesday? Look at that, I forgot already. Have a great Wednesday. Thank you, Scott, for all you're doing. Everybody have a wonderful day. Thanks, guys, for your patience.